The most important book of all for the 1715 fleet, which I'm leaving the topic now, so I'm mentioning this, is a book called Pieces of Eight that was put out in 1964 by Kip Wagner. And in my mind, it remains the very best treasure book of all time. It is a wonderful read. You take it to the beach, you can read it in one day, and just you'll dream about treasure all night. My wife even got interested in it, and she bought it for all of her relatives. And it's just, but it's available in a lot of forms. The copy I have here is the first edition. It's actually also signed by the entire company that did the salvage. So that has some value, but it's just to show you that that's a good book to have. You might also notice that I got out some artifacts and coins during the break, which you're welcome to look at when I'm done here, and I'll be happy to explain to you everything about them. Just a smattering of the stuff we've done. So before I move on, I wanted to cover just a few wrecks that were in the area of the 1715 fleet. These are coins that were found, or sorry, shipwrecks that were found in the process of searching that area since the 1960s. I won't get into any depth in any of them, but you can see that it's quite a range of time periods. Anything from 1824, 1857 at the high end to 1500s at the early end. As I've been doing here, this is geographical, so 1810 wreck is the northernmost, and the power plant wreck, that's the southernmost in that area, that whole treasure area. But again, I can get into more depth with you personally if you'd like to know more about all these wrecks, but they're minor compared to the 1715 fleet. They didn't have anywhere near the amount of treasure that the others did. Some of them weren't even necessarily treasure wrecks. You have to figure any wreck probably had a safe on board, like a ship's purse, or maybe it was carrying a payroll. It's really kind of an interesting story about the Fort Capron treasure, the Gordy Ashley Indian War Gold. If you see the one up from the bottom, a bunch of U.S. gold coins were found. This was part of a loss during the Seminole Indian War that just lost some coins. Not even a shipwreck, it was just lost in the surf. So what I want to get into next is south of here, south of Fort Pierce. This was a wreck called Jupiter Wreck. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's much more obscure than the 1715 fleet, but every bit of it is important because it was early. It had some very interesting Spanish coins on it. In fact, ones that we didn't really have record of until this wreck was found. It's also a kind of an example of how treasure diving can kind of go sideways. The wreck was known about for a long time, but it wasn't actually found in modern times until a lifeguard named Peter Leo, the gentleman here and here, found it, but he needed some help, so he brought in this guy, Dominic Adario. He was an experienced salvager, and they just eventually didn't get along and had fights over what they'd found, and they brought in subcontractors who were all paranoid about the whole thing. I went down to a division that they had one year, I don't know, 25 years ago or something, and I was worried that people had to check their guns at the door. They definitely not getting along, and they just needed to split everything up, and they just couldn't agree. So my role was to kind of put it into piles and kind of stand back and let them fight over it. Anyway, I think Bob Marks coined the term "trouble with treasure." It's the way it is. You know, anytime you bring in valuables that weren't there before, there's a lot of temptation, a lot of egos get in the way. And this was really this shipwreck was no different from any other in that regard. And in fact, the downside is, and we didn't get into this with the 1715 fleet.